My alien maid walked into the engine room wearing only an apron. Said she needs my help. The reactor had a way of filling your bones with its hum until you forgot where your heartbeat ended and the ship began. I was elbows deep in a stubborn coolant valve when the hatch slid open and the hum faltered in my chest, replaced by something far more unruly. She stepped in barefoot, silver toes flashing against the grated floor, wearing nothing but an apron woven from thin, coppery strands that caught the blue reactor light like netted starlight. She carried a tool roll and an expression that managed to be both calm and faintly amused. "Chief Reed," she said, voice steady. "I need your help." Sera, why are you wearing only that?" Sera, ship's maid, though she hated the translation, tapped the apron's hem. "Conductive weave. My clan tends homes and hearts. On ships, the core is both. Cloth would insulate. We can't afford insulation today." A chord of alarm trembled through the boards. On the far bulkhead, my board flared with jittery orange. "We have a harmonic surge inbound. Gravity well scarring," I muttered. "Starboard coils will sing themselves to death." Sera set her tools beside me, unrolling 24 disc-shaped dampers with filigree etched across their faces. I'd seen them in spare lockers for months and never asked. "These tune the ship," she said. "But their placement requires a second heartbeat." "Yours? Placement where?" She turned, and bioluminescent lines shivered awake beneath her pale skin, scattered constellations running from the nape of her neck down her spine, branching beneath the apron's open sides. The patterns pulsed to the reactor's rhythm, faint at first, then brighter as the alarm tone climbed. "Along the resonance meridians," she said. "The discs must be laid at intervals that you will feel, not measure. Your hands. Your judgment." I glanced at the safety placard about proper attire and decided not to die on that hill. "All right. If it keeps the coil from tearing itself apart." "Good," she said, and the corner of her mouth softened. "And Jonah? Ask before touching. My people weave consent the way your people weave wire." "Understood." I swallowed. "May I?" "You may." I set the first disc at the small of her back, where the glow flared hottest. The filigree awakened with a tiny click. Her breath hitched, not in discomfort, more like the way a singer finds her starting note. On the display, the wild orange dipped toward yellow. "Next," Sera murmured. 2 finger widths down. "You'll feel the hum shift when you're over the right place." Her guidance threaded through the storm. The room grew warmer. The smell of ozone and the clean metal salt tang of the core pressed in. I followed the living map of her, placing discs along constellations I hadn't known existed. Each time my fingertips hovered, the engine hum changed, a subtle easing, a chord-finding resolution. "Someone rode this route dirty," I said. "Scars in the grav field don't happen on their own." "Sabotage or desperation," Sera replied. "Both smell the same to a core." She looked over her shoulder. "And to me." Before I could answer, the ship lurched. The hum jagged into a grinding howl. One of the lights over the manifold burst with a sharp pop, raining glass. On the board, the starboard coil spiked red. "By the saints," I said, hitting the intercom. "Bridge, we're in a harmonic cascade. We need a vector change now." The reply was static and the thin cry of an overworked transmitter. "Comms are down," Sera said. "The cascade is feeding on itself. We finish the pattern or we lose this ship." "There's not enough damping here," I said, scanning the schematics. "We need a slaved ground. A human body is conductive." Sera faced me fully, the copper apron throwing fractured light across her skin. There was fear in her eyes now, and trust braided tight around it. It will hurt. It'll hurt worse if we fail, I said. Sera, may I bind the apron's leads to my gauntlets? That should bleed the excess. You may, she whispered. I hooked the apron's thin leads to my gloves, felt the immediate tingle of borrowed storm. Together we moved, she placed my hands, I set the discs, our breaths fell into the engine's staggering rhythm. The surge shoved back, heat building, muscles trembling, the world reduced to a line of light across her collarbone and the desperate arithmetic of survival. Here, Sera said, bending to open the access hatch beneath the coil. The last disc must kiss the heartline. I didn't ask what that meant. I saw it, the brightest flare, pulsing like a beacon. Sera hesitated. May I? She closed her eyes and nodded. I set the final disc, and the ship screamed. The sound punched through marrow. The deck rose. The apron's leads seared my palms. Sera's hand found mine, fingers strong, steady, and together we held as the surge reached for us and then, like a wave meeting a deep channel, broke and slid away. The alarms fell, one by one, into silence. The hum softened. The light steadied blue. Sera sagged against me. I eased us both to the floor, the great cool against my knees even through the trembling aftermath. For a long breath, the only sound was the soft click of cooling metal and the synchronized climb of our chests. On the board, the starboard coil pulsed a calm, untroubled green. Bridge here, a voice finally crackled through. Core report. I stared at Sera. She stared back, and in her eyes was the reflection of a ship that still existed. Stable, I said into the pickup. Core is stable. We stayed there another moment, hands still linked because letting go felt like daring the storm back. You called yourself a maid, I said at last, voice hoarse. I think the word cheats you. Sera laughed. Quiet, a spill of water over warm stones. In Kesh, the word is hearthkeeper. We tend heat, heart, and home. My grandmother taught me the apron pattern when I was 8. It grounds a core, and it tells a partner you trust them with your life. The translation to Maid is convenient for humans. Less frightening, perhaps. And the partner part. My mouth was suddenly dry in a new way. Is there a tradition I just walked into? She tilted her head. You asked. You listened. You touched only with permission. You saved us both. Where I come from, that is the beginning of a binding, if both wish it. The reactor's hum had settled into something like a lullaby. Outside the hull, the stars went on being stars. Inside, the ship breathed. I wish it, I said. My voice surprised me with its certainty. But slowly, properly, with more clothing around high-voltage equipment. Her smile brightened the dim room better than any relamped fixture. A sensible human. The saints will gossip. Footsteps clanged in the corridor. Crew voices rose, already trading rumors. Sera stood, gathered her tools, and the coppery apron whispered as she moved. At the hatch she paused, looking back at me, all bioluminescent constellations dimming to a gentle glow. Meet me after shift, she said. We will share tea and the story of how the engineer and the hearthkeeper tuned a ship and found a shared rhythm. Where? Asked. She touched the bulkhead, fingers tender on the steel. Anywhere the core can hear us. She left, and I turned to tidy the valve I'd abandoned, hands still buzzing faintly with borrowed lightning. The reactor hummed in its steady, newly tuned key, our key, and for the first time since I'd taken this job, the engine room felt less like a machine and more like a home that had chosen me back.